What do you do as a consultant?
Oh, I consult, but most of the time I add value.
Wow!
Hi, I'm Amy. I graduated from Caltech and I've been a consultant now for 4 months. Before I started, I still didn't even have a good idea of what I signed up for and what I do day to day for a consultant. And so I hope that through this video, any of you guys considering consulting or are already locked in but haven't started, or just curious about what consulting is, because I know I was, I hope you guys get a better picture of what a consulting project looks like. I majored in chemical engineering, so nothing to do with business, but I'll explain in a later video why I made the switch into the business world. As I talk about my project, I'll also have some general commentary on consulting. My very first project was actually a 2-week diligence. So diligence is a really fast-paced project where usually you look at some company that a private equity is looking to invest in. Because I was very new at everything, I didn't really take the reins on anything. So that's why this video is actually going to be explaining about my second project that I consider my first project. And this was a 9-week strategy project. I really enjoyed this engagement because not only did I find it interesting to really analyze the different business aspects and formulate strategy that I think and hope will be impactful to our client, but I was able to really take more ownership of my work stream and contribute to the entire effort overall. So this project went over 9 weeks as mentioned, but technically in a calendar 10 weeks because the week of Thanksgiving we didn't count. And how we decide how long these projects take, well, I guess we don't decide, it's more the managing partner. So they create an engagement letter and go back and forth with the client to decide whether this is what they want. For this engagement letter, usually people who are not staffed on a specific project yet, they might do client development. And so that means that when there's a potential project, they will be researching areas that are relevant to a potential client's industry and kind of research how to build up the proposal to win a project. Then for the engagement letter, the partner determines the scope, which is a fancy word for what the deliverables promised are. At the start of each project, especially because it's usually a new industry for all of us, this industry was insurance in particular. And just a heads up, I'm not going to give any specifics about what the project entailed, but it's going to be in general terms so you guys get an idea of what an overall project is because they vary anyway. But the first 2 days entail reading the engagement letter, so really understanding what's going to be laid out in each portion of the timeline and what are the things we're going to have to work on and the deliverables. Something I did to prepare for my team is I created an engagement letter tracker so we can kind of check off the things that we've done throughout the duration of the project. And then it's brushing up on a lot of old decks and secondary research on the industry. And then pretty much we like to get a head start, so we already are reaching out to ENS, which stands for Expert Network Services, which is where they source different experts, different subject matter experts from the industry and usually competitors of our client to understand what they're doing better and what kind of insights we can glean from their previous activities and initiatives. The 9 weeks was broken up into 3 parts, 3 weeks each. So the first one was called conducting a diagnostic. This is when we analyze our clients' data to understand what they're currently doing and their more quantitative data, and then through interviews with subject matter experts, compare those and kind of get a benchmark for what the client's doing in relation to the industry average. We created interview guides to follow throughout, and what was cool is that I actually led one of these interviews and it was pretty daunting at first, but with anything in consulting, just be prepared, and sometimes you just gotta jump into it because they're really just gonna throw you into the fire in your first couple projects and you have to figure it out, and the only way to get better is just by simply doing and getting in more reps. In particular, in those first 3 weeks, I got a lot of feedback from my engagement manager. They're called different things like project leaders at different firms. Our leader is called an engagement manager, which is essentially like a supervisor of this engagement. And we call them EM for short. It was kind of a first to receive constructive criticism. She would give it to everyone, but it was really nice too, because that's what I realized is good about consulting and to make you learn much more quickly is because there's just so much feedback that you get and iterations upon PowerPoints and Excel, and then just again like many reps to improve. What I learned is that EMs differ a lot from project to project. Different EMs have their different styles of working. So what I can say is just in the beginning of a project working with a new EM that you kind of just spend some time to discuss with them and understand what their style is, whether they prefer to be communicated with through an instant message or through email, and other preferences about their schedules potentially during the day. In addition to interviews of external folks, I've never really said folks before, that's funny. Anyway, external folks, we also interviewed internal people at the company, at our client company. And this was a ton of interviews with everyone from the CEO, which was really cool, like, you know, to be exposed and just interact, even though I didn't say anything in these meetings, with these such high-level people. So all the way from CEOs down several layers. And that was a ton of interviews. I'd say we did like almost about 15 interviews. And some days we had 4 interviews stacked like back to back to back. So that's just the nature of the beginning of any project, I think. It's even more fast-paced on a diligence, but you just get pretty worn out by having so many interviews per day. And especially for me in my position, I'm just taking notes, trying to capture everything verbatim, so that's tiring as well. But through these interviews and seeing how our engagement manager and associate level consultants interact with the client, I can learn a lot by trying to understand how they interact and how they're thinking of these problems. Next, as part of this first phase, we distilled some trends that we saw, some best practices that we found from our interviews with people in the industry, and then took some themes from those internal interviews. We put these together in a deck to present at the beginning of phase 2 when we held a leadership workshop where we discussed with our client leadership team ideas and presenting basically our diagnostic findings and brainstorming together what things we can do to improve this. And coming out of this workshop, we again distill those insights from that meeting and we create more structured strategy options and what the pros and cons, other factors and considerations of these options may be, while at the same time still keeping close collaboration with the client leadership team and basically iterating. So for me, I took on a certain work stream. I just had to really figure things out on my own, like how to use the software, how to visualize the data, how to present it in the best way. And then with my teammates, we had working sessions together over Zoom and problem solving sessions with our engagement manager as well. Before each deck is sent out, we would go through and just make sure we buddy check. I suppose this doesn't sound that exciting, but if you're interested in consulting, this is what you'll do. And so getting awareness is good. But yeah, we would sometimes even go through line by line together, which is sometimes kind of painful, but it has to be done to ensure high quality work. Then once it's perfected, we can send it out. And then at the beginning of phase 3, we had another workshop where we presented more in detail these quantitative consequences, or I suppose effects, of each of the presented options and strategies. Then coming out of getting the leadership team's opinions on those, lots of back and forth, then we would finally, in the last phase, create a design document and just really codify the entirety of what we did throughout, pulling together things that were in our previous slides and then presenting it to an executive team. Throughout this whole project, I would say that it's definitely a lot of PowerPoint and Excel, as said in those consulting memes. It's pretty funny, like those consulting memes are pretty true, but if you're lucky like I was, it won't be as painful or have that big of an impact on your sleep and mental health or be as torturous as those memes say. So of course they're exaggerated sometimes to be funny, but in general it was a great experience. And consulting is really no set hours. Just know that if you can be lucky and just be on a fun project with a fun team and get the work done in a timely manner. Timely doesn't mean regular work hours like from 9 to 5. It just means that we're not spending too much like unnecessary time going way past 10 p.m. And granted, there were several nights when we had to work till like 10 or I think one time even 11 p.m. just having a working session with analysts like me and then the associate on our team, going over data, trying to finalize the deck. And that was okay because in the end of the day, we want to add value for our client as much as possible. Another learning I got from my experience so far is that you just have to always be available, and there's no really expectations of structured hours. It's just that there are many things you have to do throughout the day, and so especially when you have 5 interviews lined up, that's already 5 hours of your day. And then after those interviews, you have to do the tasks that were on your plate anyway for that day. And so that's why sometimes you end up working much later than you would prefer. Consulting is also about many iterations and treating each person like a client. So as analysts and associates, we kind of treat our EM as a client that we're trying to serve them and providing the analysis that they want. And then the EM would be wanting to present that and the more completed product of the deck or analysis. After they checked it and provided feedback to us, they would then bring that up to the partner, where then the partner is like the EM's client, and so on. And so it's a good system, and there's a lot of teamwork and collaboration involved, which I like. But now it's the new year, and I am on a new project, which I like as well. And so we'll see how this goes, how this gig goes for a bit. If I miss anything, and if you have any questions, I'd love to help and answer them for you. Please let me know if anything was interesting as well down in the comments. And I wish you luck in work, school, or looking for work, anything you're doing right now. So I'll see you next time. Bye.